Hi, good evening all. In the last webinar, we have seen the meaning and scope of supply. Today we will look upon the next chapter, that is the fifth chapter, time of supply. And in time of supply chapter, there are three sections. The first subchapter is time of supply for goods. As we know, the term supply is used in the goods and services tax law for determining the tax liability. So, the time of supply indicates the time when it is deemed that a supply is made and tax is levied. That is, at the time of supply, the taxable person is liable to pay GST. He is liable to collect GST as well as pay that collected tax to the government. So it creates a liability on the taxpayer to pay GST. So it is important to determine the time of supply for determining or realizing the time of payment of GST. And as per the GST law, there are separate time of supply for goods and services. So in this chapter, we will look upon time of supply for goods, and in the next subchapter we will see the time of supply for services. Regarding time of supply for goods, it is the earliest of the following, and please note that as per the revised model GST law, some points is changed and that we will see later. And as per the model GST law, we will see the time of supply for goods, and it is the earliest of the following. So we have 4 points, and whichever is happening earlier, that will determine the time of supply. So first point is the date on which the goods are removed by the supplier. That is, if the goods require a removal by the supplier, then the date on which those goods are removed by the supplier to the customer will be taken as the time of supply. And the second point is, if removal is not required by the supplier, as per the agreement it is not required, and it should be made available only to the customer. The customer will take the delivery. Then in that case, on the date when the supplier making goods available to the customer, he is not required to remove the goods and to give to customer, but he is required only to make it available. And in that case, it is to be noted that the date on which those goods are made available to the customer by the supplier should be taken as the time of supply. And the date on which these are the 2 points, and the third point is the date on which the supplier issues invoices. And this third condition will be applicable only if these two situations are not applied or is not available to determine. In that case, the date on which the supplier issue invoice to the customer will be taken for determining the time of supply. And the fourth one is the date on which the recipient shows the receipt of the goods in his books of accounts. So it is applicable when these 3 points are not available or happening not in the earlier, then this one will be taken. This is changed in the revised model GST law in November, issued in November. So these 4 dates should be identified to determining the time of supply. Lot of debates or litigations may happen in this regard. Let us understand that these dates are important. The goods removed date, the goods made available date, the date of issue of invoice, and the date on which the recipient shows the entry in his books of accounts. Okay, the third point is, say my date of invoice is 5/3/2017. Okay, that means as far as my understanding is, if the goods are not removed or made available, but invoice is already issued, in that case time of supply is happened and the supplier is payable, liable to pay GST. That is when the invoice issue is happening before making it available or removal to the supplier customer. We will see with some examples maybe in the next webinar with this value of means meaning and scope of supply, time of supply, and value of supply also. Okay, so another scenario is what will happen in the case of continuous supply of goods. Continuous supply of goods means we have agreed for a bulk quantity of goods or more installment wise supply of goods. In that case, when will be the time of supply? Whether it is partially determined or on a, for all the quantity together. In that case, successive statements of accounts or successive payments are involved. Means the supplier is issuing separate statements to the customer, or the customer is making various installment wise payments to the supplier. In that case, expiry of the period for a part supply will determining the time of supply. Okay, that is, if the bulk quantity is 10,000 kilo, say 10,000 kilo, 2,000 kilo is issued. Okay, in that case, successive statements of accounts is issued by the supplier to the customer. In that case, the time of supply for 2000 kilo will be date on which it is delivered. Okay, and if there is no successive statements of accounts or successive payments, the time of supply will be the date of issue of the invoice or the date of receipt of payment. These two will be taken. The date of expiry of the period for a part of supply is taken, means on which the supplier has agreed for a part supply. But in this case, no successive statements or successive payments are involved. In that case, the date of issue of invoice or date of receipt of payment will be taken. Whichever is earlier will be taken as the time of supply. So this is the law. Then what will happen to the goods sent on approval basis? Means the supplier send those goods to the customer, but the customer tells that I will check, I will test it, then only I can confirm whether the sale can be made. That is sale on a future date, and the buyer can confirm. That is goods sent on approval basis. In that case, what will be the time of supply? The time of supply will be date on which the buyer confirm his approval. Means the goods are sent to the buyer by the supplier, and the buyer confirms it. That is, he is taking the delivery, and it will be a supply legal as per the GST Act. Then the supplier is liable to collect GST and pay to the government on buyer's confirmation. And what will happen if the buyer does not approve? In that case, 6 months from the date of supply. Okay, suppose the goods were sent on July 1, and suppose the buyer confirms it on September 30th. September 30th. Then the time of supply will be September 30. On September 30, the supplier will be liable to pay GST. And if the buyer doesn't confirm, the supply date was July 1st, but the approval was not received by the supplier on December 31st also. For last 6 months, the supplier doesn't get any approval from the buyer. Then 31st December will be the date of supply. Yeah, if goods rejected, okay, it can be rejected. Then no tax liability will be there. There will be a debit note and credit note and all. And buying, okay. So that is the thing. And if the goods are still with the buyer on 31st December, then it will be taken as time of supply. 31st December will be taken as time of supply. This is a small PPT which include all time of supply for goods. But I think a lot of debates will be happening on this, some points of law. Yeah, if goods destroy in transit, there is a remission clause we will cover. I think it is not covered, but we will cover in another. Goods supply out of state, how we will getting goods supplied out of state, how we will for which purpose we have to get approval. We have to get the approval from the buyer. Anyway, if goods are sent on approval basis, means we need to get the confirmation from the buyer whether it is inside state or outside state. Okay, fine. I think points are clear to you. Let us take time of supply for services. Time of supply for services means we already have covered time of supply for goods, and let us now look on time of supply for services. There is separate time of supply for goods and services. Time of supply for services should be determined to ascertain, to identify the liability to charge GST. And at this tax point, taxable person is liable to pay GST. We have already learned that. And there are separate time for supply of goods or services. Then for services, time of supply or liability to pay GST is determined by whether invoice has been issued within the prescribed period or after the prescribed period. For determining time of supply for services, we need to look upon the issue of invoice. When was the issue of invoice? When we issued the invoice, that we have to check. So this is the law. When invoice is issued within the prescribed period, there will be a prescribed period specified in the law, and if it is issued within the prescribed period, whichever is earlier, that will be that is important. There are two dates. Date of issue of invoices means when the invoice was issued by the supplier to the buyer, and date of receipt of payment, that is when the price was collected from the customer to the by the seller. Okay, so two dates are important. On which date invoice was issued by the seller, or date on which the receipt of price for services was received by the seller. So whichever is happening earlier, that should be considered. And the another thing is prescribed period. We have to check the rules. My memory, this prescribed period is not yet specified. I'm not so clear, but I will check and will tell you next day. Yes, something whichever is supply for TDS. I'm not clear, Rajini. I'm not getting it. Your point. Okay. So in this case, invoice is issued within the prescribed period, and if the invoice was not issued within the prescribed period, that is a second situation. That is, we have to check date of completion of provision of service. Say invoice was not issued within the prescribed period. Then what we will do? There is no invoice. Then we have to check date of completion of provision of service as per the agreement. We have to check the agreement and all, and whether the provision of service was completed, or the date of receipt of payment. Okay, even if invoice was not issued, the payment would have been received. So it used to be checked. Okay, so whichever is earlier of this one, these two things, two dates should be considered for determining time of supply for services. Okay, yeah, date of completion of provision of service as per the agreement, or actual completion. Okay, there are some points. I will note down these points and will come back to you again. Okay, good points. Okay, other situations. Some other situations may come. That is, invoice is not issued. In that case, other dates are not ascertainable. What will happen? Invoice was not issued. Date of payment or date of completion of provisional service also not ascertainable. In that case, we will take date on which the recipient shows the receipt of services in the books of accounts. That is when the entry was made for receipt of services by the buyer, by the recipient. That is a rule. Okay. And here also continuous supply is coming. Continuous supply of services. The time of supply shall be the due date of payment if ascertainable from the agreement or contract. Okay, that is a due date. Maybe it is installment basis. Then installment payment is mentioned as per the agreement. Then that date should be taken as the time of supply. Suppose 6 months contract is given for providing services, say a website service or software service. In that case, suppose the software developer is telling after 2 months you want to pay 30% of the contract value. In that case, time of supply will be taken as like this. Okay, and if due date is not ascertainable, in that case, earliest of issue of invoice, receipt of payment, or completion of event will be taken. So all this date should be analyzed if the due date is not ascertainable from the contract. Okay, if the contract or agreement is telling about the due date of payment regarding installment payment, or in the case of continuous supply of services, then that date should be taken as time of supply. And if due date is not ascertainable, then the date of issue of invoice, receipt of payment, or completion of event, whichever is earlier, should be taken. If a part of services is rejected, then we have to use debit credit notes and all. That depends on case to case basis. Then what is reverse charge mechanism? That is applied to imports. Okay, mainly imports. In that case, the time of supply will be the earliest of the following dates. That is, date of receipt of services, date on which payment is made, date on which receipt of invoice, date on which the entry was made by the supplier. Okay, so all these dates should be determined in the case of reverse charge mechanism. And when the draft GST law was issued, lot of points came from mainly in this supply chapters, supply points. So some changes are made in the revised GST law, like these things are removed somewhat. I remember. Okay, I will go through the revised model GST law after a small break. Okay, so this is regarding supply for services, time of supply for services. We will have to check whether invoice was issued within the prescribed period or it was not issued. Then if what we should do when the invoice is not issued or other dates are not available, then what we have to do in the case of continuous supply of services. Okay, and we have also gone through reverse charge. Okay, we will go through the third PPT for the time of supply chapter. As I have told earlier, there are separate rules for goods and services, and if it is not possible to determine the time of supply in terms of these rules, what is these rules? The rules we have learned in the earlier two PPTs. There is a residual entry. Okay, and if periodical return has to be filed, what is a residual entry? We will see. If periodical return has to be filed, due date for filing periodical return, that should be taken. This rule is applied only when the earlier rules are not applicable or not applied. And if periodical return has to be filed, due date for filing periodical return. And in the other cases, we have to look on the date of payment of GST. Okay, date of payment of GST. So that is a residual entry. And what do we have to do in the case of part payment? Suppose part advance payment or invoice is issued for part payment. The time of supply will not cover the full supply. It is applicable only to the invoice issued or part payment done. That we have already seen in the last PPTs. Then we have seen date of receipt of payment that should be applied in the rules. So in this case, whichever is earlier, that for determining the date of receipt of payment, we have to take these two dates, and whichever is earlier happened, that should be taken as the receipt of payment for determining time of supply as per the rules. So if the payment is entered in the books of accounts by the supplier, that date can be taken. And if the payment is credited to his bank account, then that date should be taken. Whichever is earlier should be taken as receipt of payment date, and that date can be put for determining the time of supply as per the rules. And we have a case study. There was a change in GST rate, and the tax was increased from. Now we have prepared the PPT like 1/6/2017 with an assumption that, with an expectation that it was prepared with an expectation that the GST will come on April. But let us take this as an example. Okay, there was a price GST rate revision in 1/6/2017. Before 1/6/2017, the tax rate was 18%. Okay, and invoice issued and service was provided. The supplier had issued the invoice to the customer, and the supplier had also provided the service to the customer. Okay, but only after 1/6/2017, payment was collected by the supplier. You got the point? There was an agreement with the supplier and customer, and before 1/6/2017, service was provided as well as invoice was issued for the services provided. But only after 1/6/2017, payment was received by the supplier. So which tax rate should be taken? Means here, before 1/6/2017, tax rate was 18%, and after 1/6/2017, it is 20%. So which tax rate should be applicable? Here, as this happened before, invoice service was provided earlier, that should be taken, whichever is earlier. So 18% shall be applicable. So today we have seen 3 PPTs. Here in the third PPT, we have seen how to determine the receipt of payment date and what is change in GST rate, what to do. Okay. Meanwhile, what you want to do is go to gstcenter.in website. In that website, please take training page. There is a new video regarding how our franchises can deliver training to the students. Okay, so go to gstcenter.in and take training page. Watch video we have uploaded. It just demonstrates how the training will go on in our franchisee centers. You can put your comments. How do you feel? Yeah, that is a 1 minute video. This video can be used by any visitor to our site, and the franchisees can explain to students how the training will go by showing this video. Means blended learning system. That may be a new concept to majority of the people. That is classroom training plus e-learning. So our all students are getting full-time support during their course time, as well as we are providing now 1 year e-learning support. Suppose the students are joining on March 15th. They will get a e-learning video, means e-learning portal login for next 1 year. That is a 1 year support. If they have studied for 2 months and afterwards some changes have happened in the law, then also they will get updated. Okay. So there is no worry completing course now. They will get the updates in the future also. For continuous 12 months, 1 year, they will get full support from our team. Okay. As of now, nobody in India provides such a wonderful support. Okay. So all our franchises can be proud of that thing. And such videos will be coming to our website, as well as we will be including such animated videos in our tutorials also. So that will be a big change in the tutorials given to the faculties as well as students of GST Centre. Thank you. So regarding the time of supply, you can see at the end of our study material, you may be remembering our study materials. Okay. So end of our study materials, there is a summary of means highlights of draft law which was issued on 14 June 2016 and revised draft law which was issued in 26 November. Okay, and some points have changed. So a comparison is given for a better understanding. Okay, here you can see regarding time of supply of services, forward charges there. So for that here reverse charge is given. Okay, so some points are clear, some more points are there. For service, both goods and services it is given for forward charge and reverse charge. And as per the revised model GST law, it is the earliest of the following: date of invoice or date of receipt of payment in the case of services. Like that, a comparison is given in the books. So that there are some points regarding time of supply of goods in the case of forward charge and time of supply for reverse charge for both for goods and services. So such dates are given. And regarding new additions, time of supply chapter, supply of voucher is given. Okay. So in that case, time of supply for voucher, date of issue of voucher if the supplier is identifiable, or date of redemption of voucher in other cases. So such comparison is also given. Okay. So that should be taken care. Regarding the chapters, we have already covered chapter 1 webinar, chapter 2 webinar, chapter 3 webinar, chapter 4 we have covered last day. Today we have covered time of supply. Okay. So these webinars are made available at free of cost for all public, including the students or like that. We had sent the information. Some of you have joined for the webinar, and rest of the webinars from chapter 6 to from chapter 15. Okay, that will be covered only for our GST franchises. Okay, so and for franchises, We are coming with direct training also. Direct training is coming up. So direct training will be starting from April 1. Okay. So in all main locations, including Kochi, Bangalore, Gujarat or Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, all such places where we have got our franchises, we will be conducting a 2-day workshop, full 2 days workshop. It will be informed maybe 1 month before. So you can confirm your participation. You can attend those 2 days seminar, 2 days workshop for all franchisees. We can meet directly. We can discuss the subjects, courses, and also marketing strategies. Today I am concluding the webinar. Thank you. We will conclude the session for today.